Hey guys, it's Matt. Welcome back to the Notnilc arcade. You know, in the arcades we used to visit in the 70s and 80s, all these different games, Pac-Man, Joust, Defender. There was one called Dragon's Lair. It just was a little cartoon. You had absolutely no control over the cartoon figure, but you kept feeding it quarters and your entire life savings as a 12-year-old. This Notnilc arcade, all the way down a football field long, nothing but Bill's Rabbit Holes, the arcade game Rabbit Holes, all the way coming back, a football field all the way back towards you. In Notnilc arcade, there ain't no Frogger here. There ain't no Miss Pac-Man. Only Rabbit Holes. So step up, insert your quarter. Everybody's going to play the same Rabbit Holes game. The absolute ridiculous bullshit Notnilc presentation of the Count of Saint Germain. Thanks to Mike for mentioning the Count, amongst other things, in a recent email. And I thought, I never looked into this Count of Saint Germain at all. Know very little. Started looking into it, and I don't know, within 2 minutes, what a bunch of Notnilc bullshit. We live in a false reality where almost nothing is believable, but some things give themselves away more than others. Like this, guys flying around on gorilla suits on the ISS. Some things just should be apparent to almost everybody that walks the earth. Even 5-year-old Forrest Gump types should be able to see through certain things, and this is one of them. Reading from the Wikipedia for just a minute as an introduction to the Count. The Count of Saint Germain, or in French, the Comte de Saint... Why would I want to pronounce it in French? Why would I care? Fuck off. He was a European adventurer who achieved prominence in European high society in the mid-18th century, 1700 and something, due to his interests and achievements in science, alchemy, philosophy, and the arts. You'll see, this motherfucker was the Elon Musk of his day, a complete Notnilc fabrication. Saint Germain used a variety of names and titles, including the Marquis de Montferrat, the Comte Bellamare, the Chevalier Schoning, the Count Weldon. What the hell? How did he keep all his paperwork straight? Which driver's license did he use on Tuesday versus Wednesday? While his real name is unknown. What? His birth and background obscure. Towards the end of his life, he claims that he was the son of Prince Francis blah, blah, blah of Transylvania, sure linking him in some way to Dracula. He's said to have made far-fetched claims, such as being 500 years old, leading Voltaire to dub him the Wonder Man, and that, quote, he is a man who does not die, who knows everything. Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel is recorded as having called him one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived. Hey, Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel, you dumb son of a beach. This is a Notnilc fabrication. This is as real as Tinkerbell in your fucking closet. It's pretty arrogant, Matt, to really not be familiar with the character or real historical figure and declare him a Notnilc fiction. I mean, you better be able to back it up. I think I can back it up pretty quickly. I mean, I've skipped down here. I'll show you more of the Wikipedia a little bit later. But when something springs out at you as an obvious stuffed Lenin, a Humpty Dumpty, it's a Notnilc giveaway. I mean, the Count has inspired a number of fictional creations. All the times the Count has been referenced in modern culture, in songs and novels and movies and books, and this is ridiculous. This is a stuffed Lenin if I've ever seen one. This is not some world-famous character like King Arthur or Napoleon, or, the number of times he is referenced, it just is a giveaway. I'll do this very quickly, but he appears as a playable character in a Japanese Otome game series, blah, blah, blah. He appears as the master manipulator behind a series of Catherine Kurtz's 1996 novels, The Two Crowns. He figures prominently in various works by Japanese rock artists. He is a character in Castlevania, Curse of Darkness. He is featured in Gold Key's Boris. He is a character in Netflix 2017 Castlevania. He's a significant character in Diana Gabaldon's Outlander series. He is introduced as a supporting character in the novel The Magician. He is portrayed by Mia. He is the main antagonist. It goes on and on and on forever. And when something jumps out at you as a stuffed Lenin or a Humpty Dumpty, with the Notnilc, whatever we call Notnilc, trying or in some way intentionally keeping him prominent. For anybody that's new, a Humpty Dumpty or a stuffed Lenin is something that should have been forgotten about hundreds of years ago. but the Notnilc, or the dark reality here, needs to keep it in the forefront of each generation. Like the stupid song "Row, Row, Row Your Boat," because it mentions life is but a dream. Humpty Dumpty itself should have been forgotten about the very next day after it was created. It just goes hundreds of years through time, artificially carried through time, and constantly Notnilc reminds the population that this is relevant in whatever generation we're in, and for some reason needs to be carried forward. It could even be like a contractual obligation of Notnilc, that certain things that carry truth need to be carried forward. And if the people don't see the truth in it, like we see the simple and very important truth of Humpty Dumpty, you don't look to the king's horses and the king's men to put yourself back together. You do it yourself. Especially you don't look to the damn horses. That's really stupid. You do it yourself. So there are various reasons why these stuffed Lenins or Humpty Dumptys are carried through time artificially by the Notnilc when they should have been forgotten about a long, long time ago. One idea, people have, we talked about it. This is a first grade explanation. It seems like there's a lot more to it than this, but this still has merit. That almost contractually that, we've talked about in the past. If they make sure certain truths are presented to the populace and the populace chooses to ignore those truths, then, a long time ago we used to say, well, that allows them to get away with what they get away with. And, that does scream of a first grade explanation. There's more to it than that, but there's legitimacy to that, I believe, as well. Just because it's all we could come up with 8 or 10 years ago doesn't mean it doesn't have any merit. There's something to that. In the comments section of the last video, I've got Winston screaming at me about, Matt, you always say karma's BS, and then Winston tells me how the goes around, comes around theory during life actually plays out for him or for other people. Winston never once ever mentioned whatever we call karma regarding the life we're living now. I've always talked about it being bullshit going into the moment of death or in death itself, meaning if you get what you believe you get. If you believe you're carrying this monkey on your back of karma, then you've created it potentially. It doesn't exist in and of itself. It can't exist in and of itself. It can't exist on its own without us. So I've only mentioned it in that regard. Whether what goes around comes around is true in life. If you're an asshole in the 80s, you could get screwed in the 90s. Well, that might be true. It might not be true. Never talked about that aspect at all. So that could exist. But this aspect of karma, I'm saying for real people, it's BS. Maybe if you really believe it, you can manifest it on yourself. But maybe it is, the Melvin P. type entity, Melvin P. of the Belinda and Melvin P. Foundation. They're a different entity than we are. Maybe karma is real for them. Therefore, they give us Humpty Dumpty, carry it artificially through time, and say, Fromers tried to warn you and you guys ignored it. Karma could be real for them. I'm only speaking for me and other real people, what I believe. Matt, what do they get? What types of karma are they avoiding by keeping the ridiculous notion of Saint Germain carried through time artificially? I have no idea. It doesn't seem like a Humpty Dumpty type thing to me, but it is still a stuffed Lenin. And this Saint Germain is all the modern ways that this thing keeps being inserted into rock songs, and for what? Who? Some obscure character? I mean, come on, this is a joke. To me, Rasputin is another obvious Humpty Dumpty or stuffed Lenin. No pun or a little bit of cleverness intended on how close he was to Lenin, just completely at random. The way when you go to watch a movie, it says the figures depicted in this bullshit you're going to watch are just coincidentally, not tied into anybody that you actually know. Is this what we're going to depict in terms of Transylvania on television? If it looks like your brother-in-law, it's not really your brother-in-law. That bullshit. Okay, sorry. Well, it's Rasputin. I mean, come on. This is a caricature. Now, it doesn't mean, well, Matt, do you think these people just completely don't exist? Not necessarily. Saint Germain or Rasputin could have existed, but the Notnilc, maybe there's a tendency or a caricature that's able to accomplish 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. And it's almost like, well, the chat GPT or whatever didn't exist, but it's like, AI, write a program to make this character darker, 1,000 times more fascinating, and it's put on steroids. The legend and lore of the character, there may be a very basic basis for it. Can you say basis and basic right next to each other? And then it's it's put on steroids, or it's like what was it? Office Space, Flair. You have to have so many pieces of Flair. You put your buttons on, and you put glitter on. You put your Elmer's glue, and then throw your glitter. It's glittered up. It's carried through time with pom poms, and it's not what ends up. People understanding of the character in this century is far removed, 90% enhanced, for example, enhanced from the Notnilc's perspective of what it was. I think these characters, these people probably existed, and Notnilc says, oh, we can turn this Saint Germain into this, or, how many of these characters are there with this strange, even, King Arthur, the amount of stories and books and movies regarding King Arthur is so ridiculously artificial. I mean, if there was a guy named King Arthur, I assure you, I wasn't there, but his story was not that exciting. Now we got to pull a sword out of a stone and shit lady from a lake, a damn hand comes up, and okay, maybe, there's some basis to some of that, but why the Notnilc has to carry through time artificially, we'll do a whole video sometime on King Arthur. That is the stuffed Lenin of all time. The legend of that has been inflated by the Notnilc thousands and tens of thousands of times over on whatever was real or whatever should exist. So back to like Rasputin. Again, I'm not an expert on this story, but it just should be a little footnote in history that whatever, let's not go down the rabbit hole, what you believe about the Romanovs and not. I understand there are different viewpoints here. If anybody's new, this isn't my first rodeo. Just a little footnote in history that there was this evil influencer. I mean, just a few sentences here and there. But there's movies about Rasputin. I remember it was 8th grade or something. They showed, the whole Russian Revolution, the whole 20 minutes of it with a dark figure with like a hood, and Rasputin was 20 minutes of the damn TV show. It's artificial. When something that should be a footnote, just a few sentences in a history book, becomes a character that's larger in life, that's a Notnilc stuffed Lenin, or if you prefer, Humpty Dumpty. And if you see this the way I do, the logical question is, things we'll never truly understand. What does the Notnilc get out of inflating the legend and lure of a character? And again, back to avoiding the goes around, comes around karma who knows? We'll never, truly get into the mind of those, completely on the download under the Notnilc, and nor would we want to. But we can see, to me, it's obvious. And we could just do, video after video once a week on different stuffed Lenins, Humpty Dumptys. I mean, they're just all over the place. When you really think about it, for 5 minutes, you would say, well, yeah, why is this character so important, so world famous? I mean, let's just take Napoleon, for example. Again, I believe we live in a false reality, some sort of a crafted illusion. So I'm not, don't take my words out of context. I ain't giving much stock to anything. But okay, if it's real, and he moved armies all around Europe, and he was a little Genghis Khan or whatever, if that happened, all right, then you could see why Napoleon would be so famous. I mean, disrupted the lives of hundreds of millions of people over how many years, and that makes sense. But for the name Rasputin, just some little influencer guy sitting cleaning the scraps off the bottom of the Romanovs' robes, to be almost as famous, the name Rasputin, as Napoleon, it's impossible unless it's artificially inflated by the Notnilc. Matt, maybe the Notnilc is so in love with a character like Rasputin because it sees itself as a Rasputin type, as an influencer, either that or the stylish haircut Rasputin had, or whatever the robes he wore over his head, or whatever. Maybe it sees itself and wants to be like Mike. And okay, that's way out there, but see, that sort of thinking, that general sort of thinking, is far closer to the truth of what may be going on, in my opinion, of course, than what my friend Tony would say, my best, or your best friend, or your family would say. It just makes perfect sense to them that Rasputin has been half page in every single kid's textbook going back 100 years, and there's been 25 movies that have in some way featured him. It just, in books, it just makes sense, the popularity of Rasputin to people like my friend Tony, where the way out thinking may be wrong from time to time, but it's almost always closer to the truth, of course, than what your friends and family can come up with. Just winging it and saying maybe it's carrying the Rasputin character through history artificially because it wants to be like Mike and it sees itself as Rasputin. And I don't know, I pulled that out of my ass a few minutes ago. I don't know, but it's closer to the truth than what comes on the TV news. Let's get back to the Wikipedia, the endless list of accomplishments of Count Saint Germain. More names. Count Saint Germain, this is halfway down the Wikipedia, also sometimes referred to as Master Rakoczy or Master R. That's all it says, Master R, like a rapper from the Brooklyn neighborhoods in the late 80s that scratched the turntables. It says, or Master R. This is some sort of hip-hop retrocausality. Is a legendary, it keeps going on, a legendary spiritual master of the ancient wisdom in various Theosophical, oh no, here comes Blavatsky probably again. I'm tired of her. Post-Theosophical teachings said to be, I don't know what I'm going to encounter here. I just thought it was bullshit. I figured we'd do this together. Responsible for the New Age culture, oh no. And the age of Aquarius, see, rabbit holes that were at the video game, you're holding the joystick, here it comes, endless rabbit holes. Who knows if this was even on the page a minute ago? The Notnilc reality saw what I was interested in and started feeding me. Oh, he's playing rabbit holes. Give it to him good. Saint Germain has been variously described as a courtier. I understand it's courtier. I still don't know what it means. He was a courtier. Is that the guy at the bottom of the hotel lobby? You say, what's a good restaurant in this neighborhood? I think that's what that is. That's a salmonier. Adventure, inventor, alchemist, pianist, violinist, and amateur composer. Oh, sure. Yeah, Voltaire was right. The guy that can do everything. On paper, because he doesn't exist. Here's endless books, biographies, white papers, whatever, written about him, of course, because he's so fascinating. There are several authoritative biographies on Saint Germain who usually do not agree with one another. Well, why would they agree with one another? The whole there's no basis for the history whatsoever, probably, in my opinion. The best-known biographies are Isabel Cooper Oakley's The Count of Saint Germain, 1912, and Jean Overton Fullerton's The Comte de Saint-Germain, Germanus, the last scion of the House of Rakoczy, 1988. The former is a compilation of letters, diaries, and private records written about the Count by members of the French aristocracy that knew him in the 18th century. Okay, this last sentence here is a great example of, say, how we think versus how the mind numb around us think. So here it says, about Saint Germain, a compilation of letters, diaries, and private records written about him by the French aristocracy. Right? How was those records saved? Letters. Every single letter that the French aristocracy wrote was saved? How's that possible? How many letters have you written or received that you've saved? Maybe one? The second classification here says diaries written about him. All saved. Okay, the last one is private records. Saved. How did that work? So the Countess de Marie Antoinette had a bunch of papers in her hands walking over towards the fire, and the other Countess de whatever. Marie Antoinette, what you doing there? I'm going to throw these papers in the fire. We're done with them. But isn't that the stuff you wrote about Saint Germain? Yeah, it's all that horse shit I wrote about that son of a bitch. He's 500 years old and all this bull. Don't throw that in the fire. People might want to read that someday. We got to save it. And the Countess de Marie Antoinette said, that's a good point. Let's just say she did, at that moment, she did decide to save it. Let's say she did. How was it ever recovered in history later? All this stuff through history, from the diaries of the Countess de Bourbonnesque or whatever, was written about that son of a bitch Saint Germain, all the way back through the Rosetta Stone, whatever. All this stuff, all saved. All appears in the British Museum, and they got the original this and that. Does that seem a little too artificial, a little too perfect, all preserved for history? If you're trying to create a false history, probably. Does it seem a little too perfect, if you see what I mean? No matter what it may be, we have all the original George Washington letters, and Mount Vernon has them, and the, what's the other place? Montebello, Portobello, whatever has all the writings of Jefferson. We have it all. Hundreds and hundreds of letters, even stuff written. Okay, it's a little closer to our history. It's not all unbelievable, but overall, if you back up and look down at the whole story being told, it's a little too perfect. The aliens would buzz in a spaceship and they could compute it all, in just a few seconds because they're far advanced. Their whole head takes up the entire stadium, just a little tiny stick figure body. The head is so much more advanced. They would look down at what Notnilc reality is presenting to us, and they'd be saying, these people down here believe this bullshit presentation, like your friend Tony. Continuing on Wikipedia, it goes on and on. It is the account that never ends. Now it says doesn't end. The bullshit story of Saint Germain goes on and on and on. Raymond Bernard's book, The Great Secret, Saint Germain. But France. Oh no, guys! I don't know what I'm about to come across here. Including his conflation with Sir Francis Bacon and the author of the Shakespearean opus. They're admitting it. They're admitting right here that the Bacon Society wrote the Shakespeare stuff right here in this book. This is blowing me away. The Great Secret, Count Saint Germain purports that Saint Germain was actually Francis Bacon by birth. Oh my guys, rabbit holes. Matt, let go of the joystick and walk away while you still have a semblance of rationality and sanity. They're saying, okay, we've heard that the Bacon Society or Sir Francis Bacon, whatever, more than one guy, we think in the society wrote this Shakespeare stuff. This is a lie inside a lie inside a lie. It's saying that this son of a bitch, Saint Germain, is Bacon, and we're saying Bacon is Shakespeare. Oh my God. Guys, look around you. This is the 2 football fields long, nothing but the arcade game rabbit holes. No real world can do this. It's fun to keep doing it. We don't need to see any more evidence. This is an absolute joke. Matt, in terms of the accounts and biographies, that certainly has to be the end of it. No, not even close. I'll go through this as quickly as I can, guys. This is just getting ridiculous. There have also been numerous French and German biographies, amongst them from Der Wieder, I don't know. Let's just, okay, keep continuing down. Now, books claimed by Guy Ballard to have been dedicated to him by Saint Germain. Saint Germain is a central figure in a series of books published by the Saint Germain Press. Has his own publishing arm of the Saint Germain Foundation. Well, of course he would. Why wouldn't he? Don't you have that? Unveiled Mysteries and the Magic Presence, blah, blah, blah. Here's Theosophy again. Blavatsky will pop up at some point. There are 20 volumes in the Saint Germain book series, blah, blah, blah. Claimed encounters. Now, Wikipedia is actually documenting claimed encounters with Saint Germain. Now, how would this be put together? How could this possibly be put together? Let me read a few and you'll see what I mean. Annie Besant said that she met the Count in 1896. Okay, so C.W. Leadbeater, not Leadbetter, Leadbeater. Would you like to carry that name through time and history? Claimed to have met him in Rome in 1926. Blah, blah, blah. David Christopher Lewis, living spiritual teacher, claims that Saint Germain first came to him in person June 10th, 2004. What the hell? Man, you can, if anybody listening to me, you could probably summon him into your living room tonight. David Narozi, living Czech music composer, claims to have met Saint Germain in 2014. It keeps getting closer to today's date. Dorothy Leone has claimed to have encounters with Saint Germain, blah, blah, blah. Edgar Casey, the sleeping prophet, was asked while in trance if Saint Germain was present. Casey's reply was, when needed. Oh my God. Guy Ballard, Mirza, but goes on and on. Esoteric activities. Many groups honor Saint Germain as a supernatural being called a master of the ancient wisdom or ascended master. As an ascended master, Saint Germain is believed to have many magical powers, such as the ability to teleport, levitate, walk through walls, and inspire people by telepathy, amongst others. The Theosophical Society, I think that's how you say that, after Blavatsky's death, considered him to be a Mahatma, master of the ancient wisdom, or adept. Oh, some initiate. Here we go again. Helena Blavatsky, here she comes again, said that he was one of her masters of wisdom and hinted that he had given her secret documents. Ooh. Some esoteric groups credit him with inspiring the founding fathers to draft the United States Declaration of Independence. You can add that to the long list of things you can thank Saint Germain, the Notnilc Fabrication, for. You can thank him. Literally every single statue in the United States should be nothing other than his bust. End the Constitution. It says, guys, reality, if you're listening through the chat, GPT, reality, you're listening to me in real time, you have derailed, my friend, as well as providing the design of responsible for the Great Seal of the United States on the back of the dollar bill with the pyramid and the enlightened capstone. In New Age beliefs, Saint Germain is associated with the color violet, the jewel amethyst, and the Maltese cross rendered in violet, usually the Iron Cross style cross pate version. Oh. He's also regarded as the Chohan of the seventh ray, the Chohan of the seventh ray. Probably a reference to the Zohan. What's the Adam Sandler? Don't mess with the Zohan, that's the Zohar. Either, whatever. According to the Theosophical Society, and the seven rays are seven metaphysical principles that govern both individual souls and the unfolding of each 2,158-year-long astrological age. In works authored by Alice Bailey, here comes Alice Bailey, back around again like a demonic carousel. Saint Germain is called Master Recose or Master R. Here we go again. It's an endless list, guys, of just bullshit. Saint Germain's spiritual title is said to be Lord of Civilization. Now you see why this character, whatever this represents, whatever stands behind this figment of Saint Germain, you could see why it's so important to Notnilc. Alice Bailey stated that sometime after AD 2025, what? 2020, it's just 2 years from now, the Jesus, Master Ricosi or Saint Germain, the Jesus, and other spiritual hierarchies would externalize, descend from the spiritual worlds, and interact in visible, tangible bodies on earth in ashrams surrounded by their disciples. For Christians, I have bad news for you. Many Christians believe in the return of Jesus Christ, who you believe. What this is saying is you're waiting for Saint Germain to come. Guys, I've never read. I had no idea it would get. I mean, this is just really one of the most ridiculous things I've ever come across on Wikipedia. Let's just finish this up. Previous incarnations: Christopher Columbus, Francis Bacon, Hesiod, Greek poet, high priest, blah, 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 from Atlantis, Merlin, who else? Plato, Proclus, Roger Bacon, Saint Alban, Saint Joseph, Samuel. Well, it's always you're making the same Saint Germain. You're making the same mistake that everybody remembering their previous incarnations do. All these important people, right? Once you ever somebody just watch dishes. How come you don't list out your past lives where you just washing dishes and cleaning out whatever that horse left behind? Guys, here's another segment that just highlights, when the normal person reads this sort of Wikipedia, it just all makes sense. But if you stop for just a minute and say, well, how would anybody know this? How is this fact saved through history? There's so many examples like this. You come to Wikipedia, it says Dutch Republic, something regarding Saint Germain and the Dutch Republic. In March 1760, at the height of the 7 Years' War, Saint Germain traveled to The Hague. How would anybody know that? In Amsterdam, he stayed at the bankers Adrian and Thomas Hope. Bot can't even write. He stayed at the bankers Adrian and Thomas Hope, person can't even write, and pretended he came to borrow money for Louis XV with diamonds as collateral. How would anybody know the details of that? I mean, in one case, if Saint Germain saved a diary, but this happens so often. The Herodotus, go back to the absurdity of Herodotus accounting the hot gates of the Iranians or the Persians, I guess they're called at the time, against the Greeks. And Herodotus, every little account of exactly where the army went. In Amsterdam, he stayed here and there. How would anybody know where he stayed for a few days in Amsterdam in March of 1760? I mean, one person may have a detailed account via diary. That would exist for one or two people. But this is the history we get with almost everyone. 4 days before the assassination of Tsar Nicholas, we know that Rasputin sat down, had bacon, eggs over medium, and pumpernickel toast. I mean, how do you know? Where do these details come from throughout this recorded history? Absolute Notnilc giveaway bullshit. Okay, this one under the heading France, this is what we should get. This is much more normal and believable. France. Saint Germain appeared in the French court around 1748. Okay, that makes sense. If there should be some sort of recorded history that he was in some way an assistant or an advisor in the French court in this year. Very vague. That is history that's possible to put together, but not most of what's here and not most of what we get from Wikipedia in general on these historical figures. When the level of detail gets too fine, it's a Notnilc giveaway. It goes on to say, Saint Germain tried to open peace negotiations between Britain and France with the help of Duke Louis Ernest of Brunswick-Luneburg. British diplomats concluded that Saint Germain had the backing of the Duc de Belle-Isle and possibly of Madame de Pourbateur, who were trying to outmaneuver the French foreign minister, the pro-Austrian Duc de Cholet. However, Britain would not treat with Saint Germain unless his credentials. However, Britain would not treat, T-R-E-A-T, with Saint Germain unless his credentials came directly from the French king. How would anybody know any of this? Okay, I'm repeating myself, I know. Do you see how impossible this detailed documented history is? And we see this so often now. And your best friends like Tony just think it's completely believable, and you're one of those people. The death of Saint Germain. In 1779, Saint Germain arrived in Altona in Schleswig, where he made an acquaintance with Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel. How would anybody know this? And he also had an interest in mysticism, so they know all about Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel. How would you know that? He had an interest in mysticism and was a member of several secret societies. The Count showed the prince several of his gems, and he convinced the latter that he had invented a new method of coloring cloth. How would anybody know that the Count showed the prince several of his gems? Everybody records every little interaction they ever had with anybody in history, and somehow history was able to save all this before the Countess de Marie Antoinette threw it all in the fire. The prince was impressed, how do you know, and installed the Count in an abandoned factory at Eckernford. He had acquired especially for the Count and supplied him with materials and cloths that Saint Germain needed to proceed with the project. How would anybody know that? The two met frequently in the following years. How would anybody know that? And the prince outfitted a laboratory for alchemical experiments in his nearby summer residence. How would anybody know that? Okay, in one case out of 1,000, an exact diary could have been found by historians. But this is always pieced. Okay, Matt, shut up. We got it. What else is here? Let's wrap it up. The Count died in his residence in the factory on February 27, 1784, while the prince was staying in Kassel. How would anybody know that? The death was recorded, blah, blah, blah. How would they know where the prince was staying? How would that carry through time? He was buried March 2nd, and the cost of the burial was listed in the accounting books of the church the following day. How would anybody know that? Music created by the Count. Trio sonatas, opus 47, 48, 49, 50, violin solos, opus 53, 54, 55, English songs. The first song is called The Maid That's Made for Love and Me. The second song is called It's Not That I Love You Less. That's a Paul McCartney song. The third one is Gentle Love, This Hour Befriend Me, and Jove, When He Saw My Fanny's Face. That ain't nothing but Taylor Swift. He has a whole series of Italian arias, whatever that is. Opus 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, approaching 100 songs in total, and violin concertos and all the other stuff that this genius composed. It makes perfect sense. Well, Matt, he must have wrote books too. Of course he had the time to write books. And this man did it all. He did everything. The first book attributed to the Count of Saint Germain is La Très Sainte, whatever, I can't. A beautifully illustrated 18th century manuscript that describes in symbolic terms a journey of spiritual initiation or an alchemical process, depending on the interpretation. I'm tired of that word. The book has been published several times, most notably by Manly... Oh, no. I don't know what's coming, guys. Manly P. Hall in Los Angeles. Oh, no. In 1933. Jeff, are you playing rabbit holes with Jeff? Jeff would say that's what reality does to you if you some sons of bitches dive into it too much. Take your hand off the joystick and run out of the arcade. The attribution of Saint Germain rests on a handwritten note scrawled inside the cover of the original manuscript stating that this was a copy of a text once in Saint Germain's possession. However, despite Hall's elaborate introduction describing the Count's legend, the most holy Trinosophia shows no definitive connection to him. I have no idea what I just read, but I'm going to keep it in here. The second work attributed to Saint Germain is untitled 18th century manuscript in the shape of a triangle. Oh no. The two known copies of the triangular manuscript exist as Hogarth manuscript 209 blah 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 blah. Also currently reside in the Manly P. Hall collection of alchemism manuscripts at the Getty. It just keeps coming. The Getty Research Library. Guys, I'm taking my hand off the joystick and I'm running out of the arcade. I don't know what that experience was, whatever we just did playing that rabbit holes, but something really weird happened as soon as we put that quarter in. I didn't know what was coming. Fromers tried to warn me. When I dive into this a lot of times, guys, it's truly rabbit holes because, okay, I take a look and I see some of the bullshit and I could see within 2 minutes that this guy is some fabrication of Notnilc, but I had no idea what was coming here. Okay, guys, I rested for a few minutes just to think. The number of things that Wikipedia and other sources say that is attributed to this person, the level of detail, it's all impossible. You know what I'll say? Because this is not just the norm on Saint Germain, it's the way the outer ring of reality, remember in our concentric rings diagram, as you move outward from heart center, it becomes completely fake, less and less real. The farther out you move, the farther you get close to shaking the hands of the screen, it breaks down as fluid, not real, fake, cake in a lake. And, this is happening all the time now. It's not just the presentation. This is over the top, though. I wasn't prepared for this. But it's happening. This is becoming more the norm, this ridiculous presentation of, versus anything that presents itself as a professional or realistic presentation when we went to research something in 1985 or 1990 or whatever it may be. This is becoming the norm. The outer ring of reality is breaking down somehow. And we let it into our heart-centered reality doing, it's not going to corrupt us. There's no computer virus that's going to get in. We have our armor for the people listening. It's too strong. We have fun with this. We have a few laughs. It's fascinating. But, for anybody new, no real world could do this. What does that mean? It means I can't describe it exactly. We live in a fake reality of some kind where the outer ring really has impinged or infringed or encroached too aggressively into our reality. Now we can still protect ourselves with a heart-based reality armor. We do protect ourselves. We have, we're not on the ship of fools. We don't buy it. We don't fall for it anymore. but it never stops, and it's like it's gone too far. It's impinged or encroached too far. So its madness is infecting basically everything. It's kind of like, again, I don't know what that reality overlay concept means. It's just a really simpleton way of describing a lot of other things. But it's not a horrible way of describing, because how else are we supposed to describe what we witness happening every day? We just witnessed it in diving into the Saint Germain Wikipedia. And I would think, guys, if we came back in 5 years and to this Wikipedia site, it would be much more nonsensical. It would have changed in some way. I'm not saying supernaturally changed. It could have just been changed by the bot, the bot that wrote it, or if there's actually real human hands that actually get involved with some of these Wikipedia sites. Although that's, at this point with the Chat GTP and everything, it's bot written, of course. And I would say 95% of everything on Wikipedia now is bot written. I would think there'd be further breakdowns, further ridiculousness, further insanity if we revisited. Maybe we'll try to remember to do that. Revisit Saint Germain in the future. So, Matt, is Saint Germain a real person? I don't know. It doesn't matter. That's the weeds it wants us in. We went in there for a little while. We had some laughs. I don't know. Again, it could be somebody that kind of existed, and the Notnilc turns the volume up on steroids and makes it into something that wasn't. Or just never existed at all. It doesn't matter. Does that change my half page or your half page, or what you need to do in the short time we have left here in part 2 for the rest of our lives? It doesn't matter to us at all. It's just fun to expose it as being completely fake. And somehow those in the Ship of Fools they wouldn't see any part of what I'm saying. They would call me names, and I'm one of those people, and they would believe the Wikipedia, and it would just make sense to them how the Wikipedia could have recorded that on this date, Saint Germain traveled to Amsterdam and had this sort of conversation in the living room. That makes perfect sense to those in the Ship of Fools. In terms of most things like this, we will never have anything in common with somebody that has chosen to remain on the Ship of Fools. All we can do is be bigger people and return into their environment. We can visit him or her and Isaac on the Ship of Fools. We can walk the plank up and have a drink and then get off, talk to them about the NFL. And did you see Housewives of Atlanta last night? Now they have the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Like, how desperate are they getting to have the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City? Do they have a whole hour session while they sit in the Mormon church for an hour every Sunday and go to the Tabernacle? I had to visit Salt Lake City once for my job when I worked for the insurance company in San Francisco. And went out to, it was Utah, where there was somebody that one of the insurance brokers lived out there, and he's like, well, can we get a beer? And like, no. This is, what year was this? Like, okay, 99 or 2000. The beer that if I remember correctly, that they served in Salt Lake, it had to be like a near beer. They could serve a beer, but it had to be like under 3% or something. And he's like, I'll take you to a real bar. I have a membership. You have to get a membership to a bar to get a real beer with like 5 or 6% alcohol. And he's like, I can get a guest in. So we go to this membership bar. I think you could get a beer. What the hell is going on? Like, what planet is this? I did whatever I had to do there and just got the heck out of there. never went back. In wrapping this up, remember there's a lot here, guys, that I didn't even read that, talked about an ascended master, like return. Remember, I think I did mention the return of him as like a Jesus character. So technically, through the Chat GPT, he could be he could be listening to me right now. Potentially, it's not just a body in a grave rolling around. Whatever existed. If there's any truth in what the Wikipedia says through the Bard and the Chat GPT, he's probably listening to me right now. So all I can do is quote the famous scene in Good Will Hunting that Ben Affleck presented and say, if you're listening to me, Saint Germain, you suspect. You suspect. I don't buy what Wikipedia says about you. And until you prove otherwise to the world, you're nothing but a Notnilc puppet and stooge. Now, what do you think about that? Thanks for listening. Not Saint Germain, you, the audience.